able to share stories. When it comes to how we find expression for our faith, I try to be very practical. That's just how I am. So I know, for example, like PB's been doing a lot of sessions around this discipleship idea, and he's bombarded you with scriptures all over the place. I know this. So I can't say that I'm going to come with any scriptures today, because I think that you've got the theory, if you like. There's too many instances, or there's too much evidence in the Bible that talks about the fact that actually, as believers, we should be making disciples. We should be seeking to be involved in people's lives to also cause them to follow Christ just as we are. Yeah. That is essentially what we're saying. So I know, like for myself and Darren have been on that kind of journey for a long time, but I didn't have the term discipleship for it, if I'm honest. All I actually had at the time was that I had an experience with God, and naturally so, I wanted to be able to share with others or impact others in some way. So I didn't have the actual word discipleship. I didn't have all of the form around it, if I'm honest. I consider myself to be maybe quite, how can I put it, like a street disciple, in that sense that I don't have all the form, I don't have all the words. I think that some things with me and my journey with God are quite intuitive, and then sometimes I'll come and I'll hear Pastor Bumi say something and I'll be like, oh, is that it? Okay. Oh no, that's good, because you need the scripture to back up what it is that you're doing, you know? So that is my intent, is that I think that because there has been so much that has been shared, not just by myself, but you've had other speakers in here that have shared the word with you. I mean, I don't think you need any more convincing. I think my hope here today, I think, is to inspire you around this thing, because I know that PB's been trying to promote and simplify sharing the gospel through the 3 circles. Again, that's not something that I personally use. I had my own way of sharing. But I think that what he's trying to get us to do is to get our minds around to the fact that we should be speaking. We should be saying something. We should be moving towards the same goal. So my heart's intent really is to inspire us around this. And I also want to be able to share some stories as well from the past. I'd even just give you a bit of context of the different experiences that I've had. Yeah. That's the best way that I know how. So yeah. I can give the theory, but I also just like to share, actually, this is where I was, this is what I did, this is what happened. Yeah. So I'm going to say that by starting off that, I've got the title on the slide there, Engaging with the World Around Us. And the reason why I've said that is because it became apparent to me, speaking to just different Christians. I mean, I'm surrounded by a lot of people that are Christians or Christian followers. It became apparent to me that one of the barriers I saw was that we don't know how to engage. Yeah. We don't know how to have conversations anymore. We don't. It's like something happened when we got born again, and it's very true that there has to be a level of separation in terms of the people that you were hanging out with, if it's not actually helping you in your walk with God. That is very true, that there has to be an appropriate level of separation for that, particularly if you know that those associations were not really going to help you in your walk. But I think that to a degree it went over to the other side, where it's like when it comes to now being able to relate to what's going on in our world, we're not very proficient with doing that. And so I know this because I've spoken to so many people, and when I talk about what me and Darren are up to, or just certain things that I'm dealing with, it's like I'm not getting the talk back to me to say, oh, this is what I'm doing, or I'm getting the talk back in relation to personal issues, different things that we're looking for in God and all that kind of stuff. But if I said to them, you know, who are you dealing with, or who are you speaking to, I wasn't getting a lot of that coming back at me. And so it became quite apparent to me that I was like, okay, I don't get that it's because you don't want to or you don't have a heart to do it. I think it's more the fact that we don't realize that mentally we've closed ourselves off a lot.
Yeah.
And I like what PB has done here, where he's kind of stripped back a lot of the surfaces. I was like really, really happy about that, because that's what we get used to. We come and we kind of come to church and we don't realize it becomes a bit like our campfire.
Yeah.
That's what we do. We come and we do all the things and we hear from God and all of that. And then, going to work is like the break from the campfire. It is, because, because we, as Darren said last week, a lot of us, depending on what we're doing, we don't like what we're doing anyway. So it's the break from the campfire. I'm just trying to get through. You're not thinking in that mind to say, actually, I'm in a position or I'm in a place where actually God wants to speak to someone in here.
Yeah.
When I was back in 2012, just to kind of tell you like the starting as to kind of what got me here, I was involved in discipleship before that. I spent a lot of my time dealing with young people, so I was in youth ministry for a very long time. But something happened to me in 2012 where I wasn't well for about 6 months and I was unable to work, 2011 to 2012. And so that meant that I wasn't in the workplace, I wasn't anywhere. I still had, I had 1 or 2 people that I had been discipling from before that they were still there on my radar, but in terms of being out and about, it just wasn't possible. I couldn't even go to the church that I was in at the time. Such was the situation until I was recovering and got better. But it's interesting because 2012 that period is what I call probably one of the best periods in my Christian walk, and I know that sounds weird, but something happened to me in terms of me being able to rediscover God. Something changed in me. There was something about being stripped back from all of the different roles that I was playing, and it was just me and him, father to daughter, and just rediscovering him again. When I actually recovered and said, okay, you know what, I'm ready to go back to work, and even the story behind that, I actually knew when I was going to get well and when I was going to be ready for work. It was actually the April of 2012, and when I kind of had that sense in February that I was going to be up and about by April, so said April came and then up I got, and it was like, okay, time to go back to work. But I can't explain that to you, But I'm just saying all that to say that, during that time, it was a period of reflection. I began to question a lot of things about this journey that I'm on. In particular, I began to question the fact that there were a lot of things in the Bible that I was not seeing in my life. And that bothered me. So when I talk about the things I'm referring to are things like, why is it that when I pray, I'm not seeing certain things happen in relation to my dealings with other people? So when we talk about, things like casting out demons and laying hands on the sick and so on, so on, so. And even just some of the stories that you read in the Acts of the Apostles, I was like, I'm not seeing that. I'm in church, but I'm not comfortable with where I am. And I was like, I need something different. I do need something different. I'm not happy here. I'm doing the church thing, and God is speaking to me through my church environment, but I'm challenged by that. And I'm challenged by the fact that there are other people that you can kind of look on YouTube, all these different mediums, and they're doing amazing, awesome things. It's like, they're going out on the road and, they meet people, they get to pray with people are getting healed, or people are coming to Christ. And there was something in me that said, well, why am I not seeing that for myself? Because they're no different to me. I don't believe that. I don't believe that that God has favorites in that regard. I do understand that we have different measures of things, but I was like, I'm not even, in comparison, I'm not even seeing like as a teeny bit. I was like, no, or where I am seeing it, it's too sporadic. And I was like, this is meant to be my lifestyle. And so just spending that time with God and being able to reflect on some things, it made me, after I was able to go back to work, it made me determine that, okay, strength is back in my body, I'm ready to go. So you know what, I'm not going to waste any more time. I want to be challenged, I want to do something different. I want to be able to say that when I'm speaking to someone, I'm expecting something supernatural to happen. I'm expecting to see God turn up in ways that go outside of my imagination. I just was not content. And that's kind of where my heart has been from since then, if I'm honest with you. It's not that, I had to tell one of young ladies that I'm dealing with, because she says that I'm always smiling and I'm always, making jokes and joyful. And one day she looked at me and she was like, how do you do that? As if to say that that is my state all the time. And I had to say to her, it's not that I don't bleed. It's not that I don't cry. It's not that I don't have feelings and all the rest of it. I said to her, I make a decision to be joyful. Or I make a decision that actually, even though there's things in my life that are not 100% as I want them, PB kind of alluded to it, but when you kind of get to see God at work in other people, that's where I get my high from. I have to be honest. It's not, yes, I want to see God do some things in my life and all that, but if I'm honest, if I was to hear from every person in here today that this is what God led you to do and this is what happened, that is literally, that's it for me, I don't need anything else.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it works for me personally. That's how I get encouraged. That's where I get my boost from. And so when I don't get it, I'm the other side, because then, I feel like, well, am I the only one out here doing this? And then I'm like, well, then why all this time that you're spending in church and you're not motivated yet? So I kind of wanted to take you down that road because I think that it is important that we have time to reflect, I think. Because I know that PB's been quite, he's been quite militant, get out there and do something. But I think that it's also good to reflect and actually to stop and to just remember again why we're doing this. I think that that's important. So what I'm going to do, as I keep mentioning PB's names, I'm going to ask you to come and stand, sir. Just come and stand here. I want you to do something. Because you're strong. You can leave your Bible. Yes, of course. So what I want you to do is to stand like this.
Okay.
Are you good there?
Yeah.
Just hold it as long as you can. And I want you to hold out your arms like that, as if to say that you're on the cross. Obviously, if you get tired, let me know, okay? Right. The reason why I am making him do this is that I'm trying to, in a way, simulate Jesus on the cross. Okay? So that's part of the reflection I want to take you lot through is, this is the reason why we do what we do. It's because of the cross of Christ. This is why we're here to do it. And the reason why I'm getting PB to stand there is because I was going to look for images to kind of show us about what it would have been like for Jesus to be on that cross. Because I think that it's important that all the different things that come up around being inconvenienced around discipleship, all these different kind of things, I want to kind of, in a sense, I just want to inspire us to remember what actually happened to Jesus. Now, a couple years ago, I'd done a Sunday school session, about the physiological impacts on Jesus' body, as in what happened to his body physically, which is why I've got PB. Are you all right there? So far-ish. Okay, so, because I can see he's already come up a bit. When you get tired, let me know. So, just to kind of just share some points about the crucifixion. I'm not going to ask you to turn to the scripture because you guys already know. But there's a couple points I want to bring about the physical nature of it. So, number one, the crucifixion was the most painful death ever invented by man, and that is where we get the term excruciating. Two, it was reserved primarily for the most vicious of male criminals. It was actually something that was perfected in the Roman Empire. Three, so the crucifixion was guaranteed a horrific, slow and painful death. And being nailed to the cross, Jesus had an impossible anatomical position to maintain. So, as you can see, you're starting to feel it now. Are you all right? Okay, you can stand up straight for me. Stand up straight. It's fine. You can stand up straight.
I did my Aaron on her.
Okay, fine. So, the reason why I asked PB to start standing in that kind of, with his knees, trying to get him at 45 degrees, is that because that's how Jesus was hanging. Okay, so I know that we see a lot of pictures where he's hanging straight, but he was actually hanging at 45 degrees, his knees were bent like so. So that meant that if he's hanging at 45 degrees, he's bearing the weight of his body all in his thighs. Okay? So as you can see, like, I know that PB's come up a little bit, but he obviously felt it, which is why he's had to come up some. Okay? Another thing, so we remember that Jesus had nails in his feet. Okay? So as he's there on the cross, you've got his thigh muscles right here getting tired. You've got the nails in the feet, so his limbs are now starting to get more tired and weighted. So that meant that because his lower limbs were getting tired, the weight of his body now had to be transferred to his arms and his wrists. Okay, so if you remember that there was nails, depending on which interpretation you prefer, some people say hands, but for me it's wrists. Okay, so then because of the weight, you've got to remember, nails in the feet, 45 degrees, getting that pressure in the thighs, okay? Because of the pressure that he's now getting in his wrists, it now meant that his shoulders were dislocated. So all in here started to get dislocated. And then as time went on, then his wrists become dislocated. Okay? I'll carry on. Let me see. So his wrists, his elbows, and his shoulders become dislocated. And so that meant that the weight of his body is now transferred to his pectoral area, which is kind of up here. And because of that, that meant that, we will get to the lungs, So that meant that when Jesus was actually trying to breathe, his rib cage was now having to come up and out because of that weight transference. Okay? So in order to breathe out, Jesus had to push down on the nails that are in his feet to raise his body up and allow his rib cage to try and move downwards in order to breathe. So obviously, Jesus couldn't push down on the nails in his feet because the muscles have gone, okay? So they're extremely fatigued, they're cramped, and he's in this compromised position. Okay, so I'll move on to a few bits.
Move quickly.
No, do you know what? I released you, thank you. I released you, you're good. Thank you very much. Okay. So let me carry on just with a few more points there. So let's remember that Jesus was up there for 6 hours under that state. Okay? And as he's going along, he's getting weaker and weaker because we remember that before he got to the cross, he was already beaten up pretty bad before he got there. So he was already in a quite weakened state. So he's able to less bear his weight on his legs, and then his thigh and his calf muscles start to become even more exhausted. So then after that, it makes his breathing more and more difficult. So then he becomes short of breath, or dyspnoic is what they call it. So there he is, he's trying to move up and down under these conditions, up and down, because can't manage the weight on the legs, trying to move up, but then you've got your shoulders and your wrists and your elbows dislocated, let's not forget. Okay? So then, as he's going along, what then starts to happen is that he starts to feel asphyxiation, which is basically the sense of someone strangling him. That's what's going on with his body. Okay? Let me see what else. Yes, the lungs start to shut down. After that, then he starts to have issues with the amount of oxygen that's in his blood. I'm going to kind of race down here because then it just talks about how his heartbeat then starts to beat faster and faster. Bearing in mind, he hadn't drunken anything for a period of time before, so he's also dehydrated. Okay? So his breathing's already been quite compromised. His heart actually starts to fail. Okay? And there's a part in here that I was reading that actually talks about that because of the demands that his heart is requiring, it talks about that how he possibly could have sustained cardiac rupture, which means that his heart literally burst. So I'm going to skip down on the points there. So we can end by saying that Jesus died after 6 hours of the most excruciating and terrifying torture ever invented. And that's what he did for us. The reason why I'm kind of taking us through that is because I think that when it comes to the whole idea of discipleship, there's that part that I think we have to become reacquainted with and even somewhat overwhelmed with again. Because in comparison to what he now says that we should do, can we really now sort of like know all that in terms of the cross and all that kind of stuff and still be here humming and hawing about this thing? Yeah. I always say to someone that for me, with the cross reminds me a bit of a like a car crash. You know, it's like for those of us that, you know, if you're driving along, you know, and you're curious, you want to know what happened. And sometimes morbidly, we want to see how bad is it. You know, we want to see, you know, we do want to see it, but we don't, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And that's what the cross is to us. Is like, you know, if we were there, it's like you want to look, but you don't. Mm-hmm. And I think that we forget that side of it, is that it was a messy affair. And so likewise, I think that my challenge is that if we're not overwhelmed by this, or if this doesn't bother us, then we need to ask him to renew us in that area. We need to. It's not, I think that because we talk about the cross so much, we talk about being a Christian so much, it's almost like the effect of it in terms of personally that should motivate us or become a passion. It's not what it used to be. And I think that we kind of have to be honest about that. Because I don't have a problem so much if we know that it's not like how it used to be. I think it's more about being honest enough to admit that we need to do something about it. And we need to kind of go back. So that's why I said that actually, as part of this journey with the discipleship thing, that we need to consider the crucifixion again and reacquaint ourselves with what actually happened. Because that's why we're doing this. That's why we're still here. I've said yes, that the cross was messy, and that we do need to allow ourselves to be affected by it, because that should be the passion behind what we do. So it's all fine and good that PB says what he says in the way that he says it, which is true. But when he's finished saying what he's saying, we've got to be confronted with, you know what's actually going on inside of me? You know, because to be honest with you, if there's not some sort of impetus or passion about it, then you will find discipleship really hard. Yeah. Or harder than it needs to be. Yeah. You'll find it very, very hard. So I'm going to move on to my next slide. Transcendent curiosity. Does anyone know what that means? I was hoping not, because I kind of chucked it in there as a phrase, because, as I said, I didn't want to keep bringing scriptures, because there's something that happens sometimes when we keep hearing things over and over again. It's like the mind kind of shuts off. And so I was kind of thinking, I want to bring a phrase that kind of makes us think, oh, what's that? Yeah. Oh, you know what it is?
I have an idea.
Oh, yeah, go on then.
Is it like when you become more curious about something over a period of time?
Yes. Close. Any other takers on that? No? Okay. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to do another example. Okay, so I need a chair. And I need a very courageous volunteer. Not PB this time. Let's have a female this time. Someone courageous. Don't all rush. Yeah, go on. Have a seat. So I'm sure that you all know this lovely young lady. Okay, so here is my question. Do any of you lot know Jennifer's favourite colour?
Yeah.
Is it purple?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Do any of you lot know Jennifer's middle name or names? Just one?
Yeah, that's just one.
Is it Sewa?
Is it Sewa?
Yeah.
I thought that was part of your surname. Okay,
No.
fine. You know, all right. Okay. Okay. Does anybody know Jennifer's favourite food?
Chocolate.
Cake.
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 No, that was too easy.
Oh, it's cake.
Okay. No, I realised as soon as it came out of my mouth, I was like, no, that's too easy. Okay. Does anybody know Jennifer's favourite sport?
Ooh.
Jogging. Volleyball.
Tennis.
I don't even know what the answer to that is, to be honest.
You don't have a favourite sport?
Zumba. Oh yeah, I do like Zumba, but is it a sport? I don't know.
It is.
No, it's a sport. It's a sport.
Is it?
Ish.
Yeah, it's in the Olympics.
So now it's a sport, Zumba. Okay.
That's interesting. Okay, so it's Zumba, yeah? Okay. Do you have a hobby?
Eating cake.
No, apart from that. Do you have a hobby? Yes, do you have a hobby or an interest?
Yes,
Don't say what it is.
Yes, I do.
Okay, does anybody know what it is?
She loves taking time out. No.
No. Come on.
She loves going out to eat.
I do.
Is that the
She
thing?
loves
No,
shopping.
That's not the thing. Okay.
She loves reading the word.
eBay.
Being a good mom.
Oh, come on.
That's a
That's
Come on,
really
one more guess. What's your favourite hobby or your interest?
Well, my interest,
Yeah.
although I'm not able to carry, I like theatre, I like entertainment.
That's right. Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Yes, you do. Remember? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So one more thing. Okay. Do you have a favourite music artist? No.
Not really, no.
Is
No,
it-
but obviously it'll be Sterling, but...
Oh, come on.
Not particularly. However, there is one particular artist that I do
That you
like,
gravitate to.
but yes, that I gravitate to.
Does
yes.
anyone know who that is? Her favourite music artist or the one that she gravitates to?
gospel.
Yeah.
That's Jay Mossy. Female. Male.
No? You look so confused. Okay. Who is it?
Fred Hammond.
Fred Hammond. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So the reason why I did that is because what I actually really liked as well is that some of you lot faces like, no, what is it? Like, what does she do? And I think, in small ways, it kind of brought up like this, no, what does she like? What is she about? And that's why I bring up the thing about transcendent curiosity, because when we're dealing with people, there's an aspect of us that has to be interested in people. I don't think that we are. Like, what makes the persons around you tick? What do they like? What's their background? Where they're coming from? Particularly when you are trying to share the gospel as well. So, Yvette, we had a conversation last week, if you remember, and Yvette was sharing that how when she mentions about Jesus and stuff, she had a particular person that she was speaking to. That person would just kick off, just flare up. And you can make a lot of assumptions about that. You could be like, well, that person just don't want to know Jesus. That person's just da-da-da-da-da. And I said to Yvette that actually, could it be that person's had a bad experience? And then the minute that you just mention something, the person just kicks off. Because no one just kicks off for no reason. So I think that when it comes to the whole curiosity thing, it's interesting because in here, I'm not saying that you should have known all the answers to the questions, I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is that I think that it shows that if you don't have an interest, if you're not curious in the way that God would have us to be curious about people around us, then it makes it all the more difficult when you are trying to share and when you are actually trying to disciple. It's hard. It really is hard. And I took this term transcendent curiosity because the word transcendent just basically means thinking outside of the material, thinking outside of the natural. And that's how God uses us. We're not just to look at what the person is throwing up. We're not just looking at how the person dresses or the things that they say. We're trying to work in partnership with God to be like, okay, God, what are you saying about this person? Why are they like that? Or what do they like? See them. I still do it now because just on a real level, people get on my nerves. They do. They get on my nerves. Darren talked about it last week. He talked about, when you're the commuter, when you're the shopper and all that. That's because people get on our nerves. And we're trying to get home and we're trying to do what we need to do. And so up until now, I still have to do it. I have to say, okay, God, help me to see people how you see them, that they're not just inconveniences to my day. Particularly when I'm trying to get to church, as some of us will be. Help me to see them how you see them. It's got to be part of that passion that we have, that in order for me to say that I'm working in partnership with God to make him known to others, to be able to disciple well, if I'm honest with you, because discipleship, when you're actually engaged with taking someone through their walk of faith with God, you're gonna need to know that you see them how God sees them. Because a lot of the times, and this is I think what we're used to, me and Dan have this conversation all the time, that the people that we're going to be dealing with in this time are not the people that we're dealing with from 10 years ago. What I mean by that is that the issues that are coming up more so now, they are actually more significant than they were before. And so you are going to need to be like, okay, Lord, help me to see what you're seeing. Because otherwise, if you don't, you'll get caught up in all of the things that they're doing. You'll get caught up in what they're not, rather than who he's saying that they are. And I think that we have to remember that, because at some point, all of us, and even till now, but all of us at some point, we weren't where we are right now. And that's easy to forget. That is easy to forget. So if this gospel is what we say it is, then I suppose I'm just challenging and I'm saying, so then what has it become to us now? Why we have the difficulty? What has happened to us in relation to this thing? I'm going to share some stories, because I like stories, and I think that they kind of get things across better. So I'm actually going to share some real life stories around just experiences that I've had. I'm going to give you like some profiles of people that I've spoken to, just to kind of give you an idea of the different people that you can come across that are all around you. And the stories that I'm giving are actually from over my work history. So it's actually when I was working in local authorities. And as I said, from that 2012 period where I went back to work, this was the difference this time when I went to work in local authority, is that I specifically, this was me being different and being a bit rogue, I specifically said, God, when I go back to work, I'm not going to the Christian prayer group. I did that on purpose. I went once. And I did have to go, see God, see? Because when I went there, it was not the sound of people that understood who they were, it was the campfire thing. And in fact, when I got to the office and people heard that I was a born-again Christian, literally I got all the emails bombarding me, prayers at this time and prayers at this time. And I was like, actually, I don't want to do that. I want to go and sit next to the Muslim and have a conversation. I want to sit next to somebody who actually may not believe and be curious and get to know them and have my ears open to hear, okay, God, what do we do with this person? How is this going to work? And so I found that when I did what was actually countercultural to my faith, if you like, because, if I tell people that I purposely don't want to go to the Christian prayer meeting, I've backslidden. Right? But that wasn't the case at all. It was just that actually I didn't want to, I was like, I've got enough scriptures. like, for me, I was like, I had to do something that was different and sit with people. There's no point in me sitting with people that I already know are in Christ. I wasn't looking for that. I was looking for something else. And I think that also as well is that I wanted to be challenged in my faith. I wanted to see, okay, you know what? I want to know if I actually really believe this thing, particularly when you're being challenged about it. Like, does it mentally even make sense? Is it reasonable, this faith? Have I, all the sermons that we kind of listen to and all that, you know, is it really like in here? So that when I'm talking, and if I don't even know all the answers, because I don't, and I didn't know all the answers, I wasn't moved, I wasn't shaken. That's when you know. Because it's all right when we're here together and we're listening to PB even. It's all right then and we all agree and we say amen. But when someone actually comes like with something quite specific, what have we got? And if we know that that's a little bit shaky, again, to me that's okay. You just need to know that that's the case so that we can be in a position to do something about it. So I'm going to give you my first story. There we go. Okay. So I've just put the profile of the person at the top just to kind of give you an idea as to the kind of person I was dealing with. So this was a female. She was married. She had a Sikh background. She was in her mid-40s. So the kind of story that I had around this is that when I started working at local authority, this particular person had a walking club going on. And, you know, back I wasn't really interested like in my health like the way I am now, to be honest with you. So when she came and said, oh, we go walking after work, I was not interested because I was lazy. That's just literally how it was. I was not interested. But then I felt God saying to me, go. I don't want to go. I'm being honest. That is what I think that we kind of have to say, that when God is actually prodding us, that's what we're saying. We're saying, I don't want to go. I don't want to do this because we haven't gone. Or we haven't done it. Yeah. So you're not saying it with your mouth, you're saying it by your actions. Yeah. So I was like, I don't want to go. Eventually though, I ended up going, and it meant that I had to bring in all my stuff to work. I had to, again, if you want to talk about having to rearrange your life around this thing, I had to pack bags, I had to do this, I had to bring rucksack into work, I had to do all this stuff. That was really quite an inconvenience for me. So the observations from that is that I didn't initially want to get involved with this person. You know, she swore a lot, jarred. Some of us, we can't take that. Just, couldn't take it. No, almost every other word. We don't like it. But this is what we're in. This is what we're in. This is what we're dealing with. When people are speaking to you and they're dropping the bombs everywhere, you can't be bursting out into tongues every 2 minutes. You have to stand up and take it. What do you want them to do? What do you want them to do? Or did you forget for some of you that you were just as bad? Yes. Last week, PB, when he mentioned that he used to smoke, I was like, rare. Okay. Didn't see it. But literally, we forget. Is that not where we came from? Yeah. So I didn't want to get involved with her because personally, it was an inconvenience. Didn't want to know. I developed, the other thing that happened is that I ended up, as a response to that, I ended up developing an interest in my own health. That has stuck with me until today. So that's another side thing to, when we're actually, you know what, I don't think that the Bible kind of really infers this, but I'm just going to add it in from my experience, is that yes, we're called to make disciples and we're doing this because we love Jesus. But then there are other benefits. So it was because of that, I was walking 4 miles, 5 miles, 6 miles. Another aspect, I got the opportunity through just talking to her and just being an example, because I knew she had issues with Christians. And the reason why she did, I remember that there was one time she said to me that she used to work alongside one and her conduct in the office is what turned her off. Wow. Because the same Christian was the one that would be going to the Christian prayer meetings and stuff, but then when they were on the phone dealing with customers, they would drop in the F-bombs and all that kind of stuff as well. So as far as she was concerned, we ain't got nothing. But for me, actually developing a relationship with her, I actually got an opportunity to go to her home and to pray with her mother. which was quite interesting. Like, that was a bit of a shaky moment for me because I actually asked if I could do that. She didn't invite me. I asked and she said yes. So that was quite interesting. And my observation is that although I didn't get to cause her to come to Christ, I planted seed. Darren talked about that last week about planting seed. Okay? So let's move on to my second story. Oh, I can get up at the back. Story two. Thank you. Okay, so story 2. Thank you. So another female, single. So she's from a Christian background in her mid-30s. I did not want to get involved with this person because they were too angry. No, it was literally. If I can relate to you on this one, I didn't even have to say anything, and she was angry. But this one is quite interesting because, when I talked about listening to the sound of heaven and how God will motivate you, sometimes, like when you're just in that space, when you're like, okay, God, I'm open, He'll do things without your permission. And that's what happened to me here. Because this person, when they came to me, did you hear that? I wasn't actually looking for them, they came to me. And they came to me with all of their anger. No, I can't stand you Christians. I hadn't told her I was a Christian, by the way. I can't stand you Christians. And see, this is why I do church from home. And all the way she went. And I'm just sitting there just like, okay. And normally, because of my personality, because I'm not normally put off by that, normally I would have been like, oh no, this will be fun, Lord, let's go do this. Because our personalities are different. There's some things that would be like fun and adventurous to me about discipleship that may not be to you. And that's fine. But normally I would have been like, okay, yeah, Lord, let's do this. And I was like, oh, I can't wait to go home and tell Darren this one. Because I was like, who does this? You know what I mean? Like, but there was a part of me that as I started to talk to her more, I did not want to know. I'm being honest, I didn't want to know. But to kind of fast forward in terms of God doing things without my permission, I ended up discipling this person. And another observation is that I became stretched in my application of the scripture and how to listen to the Holy Spirit. I did, because up until that point, as I said, I had just been in youth ministry. And when you're dealing with young people, it's very different from someone who's in their 30s, who's got a lot of baggage, who's had bad experiences and so on. So it's a bit different when you're dealing with an adult. So there were certain things that I was like, yeah, God, no, we've got to correct about this now. And he'll be like, shh. Shh. Do it now. Like, that was me, because when you're dealing with, sometimes when you are dealing with young people, sorry guys, but sometimes when we're dealing with you lot, there's certain things that we're not going to talk and explain, because there were just certain ways that I was used to dealing with people, and just like, what do you mean no, we need to. And I was like, okay, no, what about tomorrow? Can I tell her tomorrow? I had the scriptures, I had everything, And then bit by bit, he was still just like, shh, go away and pray. Go away and pray. No, don't say nothing yet. And what's interesting about God with this experience, with this example, is that the times when he was telling me to shush, the person would come to me and would tell me what God had told them. So the very same thing that I'm like, I'm going to come, and God was actually dealing with them. And then they would come and say to me, this is what God said, blah, 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 blah. Which to me is better. Because then it's not that Vernette says. They're having an experience with God. So it's better. So I would have ruined all that if I wasn't willing to try and to be different. And because of that, she became a very significant person. You know her as Layla. You all met her. You know her as Layla. And I put in brackets, grow your friends. The reason why I say that is because for some of us who feel like, well, we don't have any friends, or, we don't have people around us. I think Pastor even alluded to this weeks ago, where he said that actually the person that you're discipling could actually be your greatest asset. And I know this because Layla's worth a lot of money. You see, that's not. You know, glory to God. But on a serious note, you don't know who it is that you're getting involved with. When I first met her, she was a mess. She won't mind me saying that, but she was. A lot of disillusionment about the church. She had been in the church for how long? Had loads of issues, a lot of disillusionment. And I keep saying to her even now, I know how I felt inside. I was like, I did not want to know you. I would try and drown out God's voice and all that. I don't want to know. And then he would do things like, there was one time where me and Darren were sitting down watching one of the Finger of God DVDs. And Darren got a word for her. So to kind of fast forward the story, when he got the word for her, I wrote it down and I was going to give it to her. It took me months to give it to her, right? So by the time that I'm ready to give it to her, I'm thinking, months have gone past now. This thing is old. It's stale. I can't give this thing to her now, Lord, because boy. And then for me, because I was nervous when I was going to give it to her, I was like, well, Lord, okay. Because it's going to be wrong. You're going to have to give me some kind of follow-up. And I'm going to need something to kind of say, to kind of just wrap this thing up and to make it less messy. You know, so in my own flesh now, I'm trying to just save face. When I actually got around to giving her this thing, the girl burst out crying because whatever was on the piece of paper was an answer to a question she had asked God the night before.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh. Wow. Wow.
Wow.
The night before.
So you were right on time.
Come on, listen, guys, listen. Is this thing working? Story free. Listen, I'm just giving you this to say that look, when PB was talking a couple of weeks ago about like this thing in your step.
That's good.
I'm telling you, it's very, very real, and it's those kind of things that actually, when it now comes to my own personal life, when I feel like God is actually trying to get my mind to grip something, you become more proficient in that. You begin to expect more because you're seeing it at work in someone else. But if you're not doing anything, then it's very difficult now that if someone does give you a word about something, it's very difficult for you to act on it. Yeah, very, very difficult. Let's go on to the third story. So again, another female single in her mid-20s. Now this one, I was excited about her, to pray for her. She was actually in my office. And so when he flashed her past my mind and I prayed, I didn't know what I was going to do next. I was just expecting, and I was just like hanging around waiting for the opportunity when I was going to, be able to speak to her. So we did, myself and Darren as well, because Darren got to meet her. So we did actually, she had a church background, as I said, but she was the only one in her family. So it was quite a weird one because her family had been to church, but she was literally going to be the only one. So it was a bit of a difficult one to kind of, and this is another thing as well about this whole discipleship thing, is that you also have to be mindful what people are also giving up. So you can't sort of like be sharing this thing and then drop them and leave them. Particularly if you're talking from people from a Muslim background, you understand they're giving up family and culture and way of life. And for some people, it's death. And so we have to learn how to look after people. We do. So let me go back to the whole thing about being curious again, and what we're doing with each other is that if we're not able to kind of look after these people, then we're going to have to look at that, because people are not just, the way that we came to Christ is not how others are going to be coming to Christ. So there is actually that something extra that we have to be willing to give. So in this young lady's situation, tried to adapt and tried to do different things. She lived quite far away across London, so even trying to connect with her, meet with her, was going to be difficult. But in the end, we actually did end up baptizing her. Okay, so I'm going to touch on that one a little bit, because that's another thing that we don't really talk about much is, we talk about making disciples, but we don't necessarily talk about the baptism bit. And if I'm honest with you, that bit was hard for me. Because when I was church street that I came up in, you always waited until, PB was free.
Yeah.
But then if PB's not here, what are we going to do? So that's what we did. We ended up actually baptizing her, and she was actually baptized in another person's home as well. But then, like what you kind of read in the scripture about, when you got the sower and he's sowing the seeds, and then how the seeds got choked up by the cares of the world, that was this young lady here. And I haven't actually, she's someone that's still in my background now. I know what she's up to and everything like that. But it's also just to say that sometimes discipleship can be quite painful. Because people, you think like, it's like, yeah, and da-da-da-da-da, and God said, and then it doesn't work out that way. And so what I would say to you is this, is that even though you feel like, yes, God is saying da-da-da, it's still what he said. He still had an intent and a desire for that person.
Yeah.
And you were actually in the room, ready to actually give expression to that desire.
Yeah.
What that person chooses to do, as with everybody else, is up to them.
That's right.
That doesn't mean that, oh, you failed and you never disciple anybody else again. Because if you start to get to the whole you failed, then if I'm honest, then you've missed the whole point of discipleship. You've missed it. Because the whole idea is that as whoever will, let them come. Let them come. If they don't want to, then they don't want to. That's their right, though. That's the gift that God has given us to be able to choose. So nothing is wasted in that sense. If God is saying, actually, I have a desire for this person over there in the corner, and you're in the room, be that person in the room. And go with it with everything that you've got. Yeah? So let's move on to story number 4. Christian background in mid-40s. So this lady, it's interesting because when I met her at work, I can't remember how we got speaking, but I found out that she had suffered some level of spiritual abuse at a church that she'd been at before. In fact, she was actually convinced, I don't know if this is true or not, but she was referring to them as being a cult and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not going to sort of like comment on that. But every time that me and this lady started speaking, and this is just to kind of tell you how people are a lot more open than you think. Every time that we started speaking and we would be at our desk chatting, this one would burst into tears. Like hardcore tears, to the point where I'm like, someone's going to start looking and they're going to want to know what's going on as to why this woman keeps crying. Because she was looking for something. She was looking for something. So it happened for a while. She started to share about her home life. She started to share about her children, all sorts of things. And it wasn't even that I was saying too much, if I'm honest with you, but it was like she needed someone to talk to. And if I'm honest with you, that is the climate that we're in now, you know. And you know how you know? That's why we have so many life coaches, because people want someone to talk to. And it's just that we are not in the positions that we need to be. Even in the body of Christ. People are going to life coaches, which is really just paid disciple agents, if you like.
Wow.
They are. They are. That's what they're going to, because I can't remember who I spoke to, or just kind of had an idea just through like what I do with my business as to what life coaches do. And it's something me and Dan talk about all the time. It really winds me up because I'm like, but this is what we're supposed to be talking about with people. You know, be the best version of yourself. Be transformed by the renewal of your mind. People are more open than you think. They are. But again, you have to be curious. Something in you has to want to know, what's this person about? Yeah? So with her, I discovered a new level of compassion, I would say, in myself. So we all have, I would say, different levels as to, you know, just in terms of expressions of compassion, how we kind of show love and kindness. We do. We have different levels. But with her, there was something about her that when I heard her story, my heart, there was just something about her story that was just like, she talked about being ostracized from the church and how people crossed the street when they saw her, all this kind of stuff. And yeah, and it wasn't one of them ones where she just saying it for saying it. This lady, I spent a lot of time after work leaving the office at 8 o'clock at night. If you want to talk about it.